The house was built in 1765 by a British colonel. His name was Roger Morris. He was a veteran of the French and Indian War. After that war, he moves uptown and builds this as his summer getaway. The original property would have been about the equivalent of 40 city blocks and would have gone from river to river. A few years after he's here and living with his family, the American Revolution breaks out. So the British want him to go back into fighting. He opts out. So he takes off back to England. General Washington, who's out in Brooklyn and Long Island, sends his troops ahead. They secure the land and they take over the house. Washington knows of the house because he knew and fought alongside Morris in the French and Indian War. So Washington's here for about 5 weeks and has one of his first major victories just south of here in the Battle of Harlem Heights. And then he's almost captured by the British, so he takes off. The British come in. The Hessian soldiers stay here. They're the German mercenaries fighting on behalf of the crown. And they're here for a couple months. Then they take off. Then it becomes a tavern for about 2 years. It's called Talmadge Hall. And then after that, it lays vacant for about 15 to 20 years. It goes up for auction by the city of New York. And a French wine merchant by the name of Stephen Jumel buys the house as a wedding present for his wife Eliza Jumel. So that's where we get the second name. So we get Morris, Roger Morris, Jumel, Stephen Jumel. So he buys the house as a wedding present for his wife Eliza. Eliza is from Providence, Rhode Island. She grows up pretty poor. She moves to New York to become an actress. She meets Stephen, who's French, and he's a French, he's a merchant. They get married. They move here, and they're, from what we can understand, their marriage was pretty happy and successful as well in a business sake because she actually helps him triple his worth. She starts collecting land and doing all kinds of business dealings on his behalf, which really benefits him. He passes away in 1832, and I'll get to that in a second because some people have discrepancies as to how he died. And that goes into the folklore of the house. But anyway, she remarries about a year later to a gentleman named Aaron Burr, who was the former vice president of the United States. And he's known mostly for killing Alexander Hamilton in their duel in Weehawken, New Jersey. But at this point, he's in his 70s. Eliza's in her 50s. They're together about 8 months, and then she realizes two things. One, he's spending her money to cover his legal debts that he's racked up. And number two, is that he's starting to take an interest in a much younger woman. So Eliza kicks him out, files for divorce. It takes 2 years to go through. The week it's to be finalized, he has a stroke, and the day they're to appear in court, he passes away. So she goes on as the widow of the former vice president. And then we have two other families that stay here after Eliza's death in 1865. We have the LaPrince family, the Earl family, and then it turns over to the city of New York. The daughters of the American Revolution took over the house for about 70 years, and then they turned it back over to the city of New York, and we're still here. So we're a museum. We have concerts, lectures, plays, and paranormal investigations. So we have 2 confirmed deaths and then 2 other supposed deaths. The 2 confirmed are Eliza Jumel in 1865, and then Stephen in 1832. Eliza died of old age. She was about 90. And Stephen, depending who you ask, he either fell off of a hay cart and landed on a pitchfork. He was brought back to the house. They bandaged him up. And then Eliza, for whatever reason, dismisses the doctors and all them and says, I'll take care of him. They come back in the morning, and the bandages have been removed, and he's bled to death. Okay, that's a great story for Hollywood. Or he died of pneumonia, which is very common. So why there's a discrepancy is because when Eliza Jumel got older, she started to suffer from dementia. One of her adopted grandchildren came to the house with a girl that he wanted to marry and said, I want your approval, I want your blessing, whatever. And for whatever reason, Eliza didn't take a liking to the girl and said, well, it's either the girl or your inheritance. So he chooses the girl. Eliza writes him out of the will. So when Eliza dies, he comes to his sister and says, okay, well, let's split this up. What do I get? And the sister says, no, you knew what you were getting into, and now I get everything. So it turns into a long legal battle, goes all the way up to the Supreme Court. So it's believed that he's the one who, in fact, started this vicious rumor about his grandmother killing his grandfather because he was scorned. He was written out of the will. The thing about it is that we have no record, no indication that there was ever an investigation. There was no, articles about it, no police reports, and certainly there would have been. If there was a rumor that she killed her husband, they would have been all over that. But from what we can understand, there was a happy marriage, and there's no reason to believe that there was foul play. So the two other supposed deaths are a Hessian soldier that falls off, trips down the stairs and lands on his bayonet, and then the other is a servant girl that hangs herself. Now, we don't have names or dates to any of those, so we mention them because, again, they've come up throughout the decades and centuries of folklore about the house, so we mention them, we acknowledge that, but at the same time, I don't know if that's true or not. There's no record of that. Not to say it's impossible. What I also point out is that this was a tavern, this was a military occupancy, and this was also vacant for about 15 to 20 years. So we don't really know what happened here at that time. Records were, it's not like today, where everything is documented, there's paperwork for everything. So I could absolutely see something happening here and we not know. 100 people could have died here, we just don't know. Just last year we found out that a soldier is supposedly buried on the property, which could be true, except that the property, as I said, was about 40 blocks. So yeah, he could be buried way uptown or way downtown at this point. And that's documented in a book called Yankee Doodle Soldier, which was written by a guy who was fighting in the Revolutionary War. He was on a trail with a partner, and they find another soldier dead, so they bring him back to the Morris house, and they bury him on the property. Could very well be. Don't know why he would make that up. I don't think he was trying to, cash in early on the ghost craze that was going to be coming years later. Anything was possible here. Also, Washington held his court-martial hearings here, so who knows how those turned out. But the ghost stories go back to, like I said, when Eliza moves in, and then they continue on throughout the years. One of our most noted ghost stories is January of 1964. The group of school kids outside on the slate waiting to come in, and then they're being loud, they're carrying on, and this old lady comes out on the balcony and says, "Shut up or go away." She goes in the house. Curator runs up, so sorry, I'll let you in. And I said, "Oh, this lady came out and yelled at us, and we're really sorry." And she said, "There's no one in the house, I have the keys." They go in, they see the portrait of Eliza, and then they say, "Oh, that's a woman." So that story goes on to the newspapers. That gets the attention of Hans Holzer, who's a parapsychologist. He was teaching at NYU. He does 2 seances here. We now have a journal in the gift shop that anytime a staff member has an experience, we write it down, and ultimately that's going to go into archives and try to continue the tradition. So disembodied voices, doors opening up on their own, the doorbell ringing on its own happens all the time, things moving, things being moved like to a different room, voices. About a month or 2 ago, I was in the gift shop. It was about 3 in the morning. I was getting ready to go home, and I hear someone walking in the basement. So I got to run down there and make sure no one's breaking in, because that does happen. There's nothing there. So that happens all the time.